Joining us now is Chris Dixon and Chris Sacca. They are investors, entrepreneurs, a lot of other things, but recently coming off of the Super Angels VC panel, which was one of the more highly anticipated panels, you would say, of Disrupt. Probably a little bit too crowded, though, on the stage, right? Now, Chris, we got a chance to chat backstage for a few minutes right afterwards, and you said you were kind of sick of the debate.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, before even going on the panel,
Yeah.
I'd written a note to Mike saying, hey, this debate stuff is played out. There's about 15 people who care about it, and the
What
rest of the world
exactly
is
is
trying
played
to build.
out? Do you want to kind of clarify
Well,
that?
I think in a world of page view driven articles, I think anytime you can pit one group against
Are you
another,
talking about
it's pretty
TechCrunch?
exciting. Of course not. I'm actually just lobbing bombs at Business Insider, except no. But I think what happens is anytime you can kind of focus on a controversy, that's exciting for people.
Yeah.
But the reality is most of the people in this audience are trying to build companies. There's really cool stuff going on with those companies. And a lot of the attention we're getting is probably unnecessary.
What do you think, Chris? Other Chris?
Yeah, I just think the industry is going through changes, and that there's sort of, there's always been sort of, people kind of offering the services that the so-called super angels provide, which primarily regular individual angel investors, and those groups have now kind of become a little more formalized, and I think it's generally a healthy thing because it's just another option for entrepreneurs, another source of capital. We provide different services. I think like VCs, sort of traditional VCs, tend to be really good at helping companies scale, whereas sort of these earlier stage funds tend to help like sort of with team building and product stuff. And so it's just different. And like in my case, I'm a full-time entrepreneur, and a lot of my partners are. And we just are good at sort of the early stage stuff. It's just I think it's a different kind of service offering. And in the sense that it gives entrepreneurs more choices is a good thing. I think the transition from a sort of monolithic industry structure to a more segmented one is causing a lot of angst and confusion and that's leading to and that's much more easily discussed on a person, talk about individual people and events and things like this. But I think the real story going on is that the industry is changing, and I think it's generally good for entrepreneurs and good for innovation generally.
So that said, I did deliver a bloody horse's head to Arrington's house yesterday.
Nice. How did that go over?
With a message from the Super Angels. Just trying to send him a message.
So putting the whole AngelGate controversy on the back burner, and that story might not be over yet, but where do you want to see the debate go, Chris, then? What would you like to talk about?
I think it's not even a debate. I just like to, before I kind of got into this business, when I was, God forbid, a lawyer briefly and working in startups and helping build companies, I liked going to these discussions and hearing about trends in the industry. So for me right now, I'm really focused on analytics. I'm really focused on companies that are helping bring accountability to advertising. Like, Chris and I will talk about that offline and have an interesting discussion over a cup of coffee, but it's weird that stuff's not happening on stage. Instead, it becomes
we can do that right
circular
here.
stuff.
Let's have that discussion when it comes to the trends. You mentioned accountability and different things that you're looking at. So what is Lowercase focusing on right now?
So Lowercase is a family of 5 funds, but the ones that we talk about here are the early stage funds. And so in the early stage stuff, we're looking for really 2 guys who've launched a site. So I like the pitch to be the URL. So it's live, but still rough around the edges. Trends that are really exciting for me, as I said, are analytics. So I think all this stuff that's been happening in the display and click advertising market is probably, there's still a lot of underspend there. So I'm looking for signals down the line.
As it relates to advertising.
Yeah, I think signals down the line. So I think Foursquare and Gowalla are fantastic in that those check-ins result some intent harvesting. I think that's a phrase you use. So like intent harvesting actually shows commercial, there's a commercial transaction likely to result there. And yet we know that people are showing up to venues as a result of tweets, right? And so imagine if we could plug those analytics back in and see all the way up the other end of the continuum that a tweet might have triggered that. People will pay money to be advertising on a Twitter platform. And so I think we have this entire continuum of chain reaction events, and now we finally have the chance with mobile, et cetera, and the analytics piece to link all these things together.
How do you see that playing out, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just generally see the internet as being, I think it's at its sort of infant stages, both in terms of its functionality and also its its economics. Like so, as an example, we've seen Google capitalize on the move of sort of direct response advertising to the web, but brand advertising, which is by far the biggest, and local advertising, have barely moved to the web. So
Yeah.
you know, in like Procter & Gamble alone spends $300 billion a year on brand advertising and only fractions on the web. They could create 5 more Googles, you know,
Right.
alone. And so I think, you know, for me, it's I guess my sort of investment approach is to find what I think are great product people who are in, you know, broadly the internet space, which I think is in its infancy, and kind of let them do their thing and try to give them some help. And a lot of that help will often be very mundane. I think the job of entrepreneurs is often, you know, like a lot of the stuff is like finding a, you know, like a good, you know, lawyer or something. I don't know what. Like, it's like there's like stuff that like day to day that like, you know, we talk about all this sort of fancy stuff and valuation, but like that's actually what I spend most of my time as an entrepreneur doing, and like hiring and figuring out contracts and like doing just, you know, the fun stuff's like the product stuff and the marketing, but there's a lot of mundane stuff involved, and that's where like other entrepreneurs can help other entrepreneurs. And you know, I'm in New York, and in particular in New York, we have special challenges, which is like, you know, there's other industries that compete for talent, particularly Wall Street. And so, you know, I think one of my goals, both as a business person and also sort of as a social goal, is to try to sort of import more of the California ethos to New York of like of building new stuff.
Which is why he says "dude" a lot more.
Yeah, I'm trying to
That
look.
helps.
I try to dress cool like him and act very California.
Use a little bit more of that.
See, I'm trying to bring
culture
Reno to California. It's this whole waterfall.
hence your shirt and everything, the whole vibe. Well, you know, so it seems like what you're looking at is also, to bring it back to your earlier points, is kind of companies around local advertising and finding the next way to also
Well,
leverage
it's one
that.
of many things. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm in Foursquare. I think you're in a couple in this space,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's definitely one interesting economic theme. You know, I think what we've seen also in the web is just new business models have been created over and over again. So we also just look at stuff that just people use. When people use stuff a lot, it tends to be a business model that develops. So also just that's why I think focusing on great product people and, you know, creating stuff that people love.
So if you guys could kind of focus in on those specific fields, whether it's advertising on the local level or advertising by connecting all those dots, what is the company that you're looking at or the company you wish existed?
Well, yeah, I still think it's too hard to buy stuff, actually. So I'm really looking for frictionless payments. Think how easy it is to buy something on iTunes. Like, you authenticate once, that lasts for a couple weeks, and then, you know, Steve Jobs has like 175 million credit cards stored. You click to buy something, and it doesn't even ask you, are you sure?
Yeah.
Just that little wheel starts spinning. You click it again. Sometimes you like almost buy it twice. And then 2 days later, you get this receipt, and you're like, you get this iTunes hangover. You're like, oh my God, what did I buy? Like, oh Jesus, like all those 80s tracks or whatever. But I think the rest of our world should be that frictionless. It's amazing how hard it is to buy stuff online and in the real world still. And I think that's a company I'm looking for.
Yeah, I'm in Venmo. You're not in Venmo, I guess. No, so I like payments are definitely interesting. I think online education is something. You just look at like the internet's going to. It seems obvious to me that it's going to transform every industry, and it's just a matter of time. Like, you know, so first it was the music industry, now it's like hit newspapers and magazines, and it's going to transform education at some point, and that hasn't happened at all practically thus far. You know, that's an interesting one. I think, stuff around local. You know, I think the company, like at some point, 5 years from now, they'll, you know, some new small business owner who starts a restaurant will wake up and say, I'm going to advertise today, and there'll be a default service they go to do that. And whoever that default service is going to be the next Google, right? And I don't know who that'll be. It might be, you know, one of these LBS services. It might be someone else. But, you know.
Well, I'm just getting the cue right now to wrap up. So thanks a lot, guys. We'll be looking out for your next investments, whether that's in mobile payments or something related to advertising or education.
What do you think?
Yeah, it's TV. This is, you know,
Thanks
on
so
the
much.
internet. Okay.
Once again,
Okay.
Chris Sacca and
Thank
Chris
you.
Dixon.